about the programme, either stay on after the end of this webinar, or please contact me direct. Laura will drop my email address into the chat. And I'm going to hand over to Ed Perryman from Replacer now, and he's going to tell you all about the work that he's doing with hospitality, I think.
You're correct. Thank you very much, Jill, and thanks to you and Laura and the team for having me on the webinar. Really looking forward to it, and to everybody else on the call, or if you're watching this on a recording, it's really great to see you, although I can't now technically see you, but anyway, it's really good to see you. So I'm Ed, CEO and one of the 3 co-founders of Replacer. You'll hear a little bit more about us in a moment, and I'm glad to have one of my co-founders, Ashil, with me today as well. If you want to give everyone a wave, Ashil. And we hope this can be a really fun, informative lunchtime session on inspiring circular economy actions in hospitality. And I think that actually the sort of overarching kind of framework around the problem that Jill just gave was a really good introduction to the large scale problem, as we then kind of zoom in a little bit more on the hospitality sector. So I'm going to share my screen in a moment. If we have any technical difficulties, if you can't see anything or can't hear anything, please shout immediately, and we'll resolve it. What I would say as we go along, please use the chat to ask questions. Don't be shy. Let's get the questions or even just discussion and input in there. There's a few occasions where I'll ask a couple of questions that just for you to guess a few really simple answers. Again, have the chat open and please engage with that. It will be more fun than just listening to me for 25 minutes. So with that in mind, I'm going to share my screen, and Ashil, if you can perhaps just let me know that you can see that okay.
Yes.
All good.
Yeah. Wonderful, thank you. So I guess probably a good place to start is just introducing ourselves properly. So we are 3 co-founders of a startup, myself, Dom and Ashil, and we have been building for the last year a circular economy platform. And our aim, why have we been doing this, is that we want to help businesses, starting with hospitality businesses, but eventually all types of service organizations, to save tens of millions of single-use and polluting items from ever being used in the first place. So we're looking to transition people away from single-use stuff towards reuse and other types of circular alternative. We're early on that journey, by the way, but that's the big plan. The other thing we really want to do is champion the world's circular economy innovators. So these are people or companies, from sort of startups to bigger organizations who are coming up with brilliant alternatives. We want to champion them and make sure that everybody's heard about their products and services. We're going to give you a quick peek at our platform later today, but that's not the real focus of today's session. So why have we chosen to focus in on hospitality? Well, as the UK's 6th largest sector, it does unfortunately have a pretty big problem with waste. So in terms of solid waste, around about 3 million tonnes a year is produced. Now about 46% of that is recycled or composted, or it goes through some other kind of industrial process, but that still means that more than half isn't, and there are issues with recycling as well. There's a lot of associated packaging waste, and actually about 85% of that is comes from the supply chains of hospitality businesses. So that's something we're trying to tackle as well. Food waste, as you can see, so much of that is produced, and around about 75% of that is estimated to be really avoidable, which is awful, really. So it's another thing we've got to deal with. This is a huge cost to the economy. That 3 billion a year figure is a really kind of conservative estimate. I think that almost food waste alone is that number. So it's a sector that is under pressure to act. There are rising waste disposal costs. Customers and employees or guests are quite rightly demanding more from whether you're a hotel or cafe or a restaurant or an event venue or a stadium. There is incoming regulation. Wales has got better regulation than a lot of countries, and more of it's coming. I think what I would say is that there's really good intentions right across the sector, and there's quite a lot of good data. And there's some excellent action, but now we need to translate that into kind of even more action to get that impact. And so we thought we'd kick off today by just going through a couple of inspirational sort of case studies. We'll just go through 3 or 4. We could have chosen from hundreds. These might not be relevant to you or your business, but we hope that you find them just interesting and inspiring. After that, we'll have a little look at some kind of best practices in terms of building business cases. I will introduce you a little bit to our platform and tell you a bit more about our journey. So, right, this is the first bit of interaction. Let's see how this goes, and please don't be shy. So our first problematic waste item, we haven't started with plastic. I often start with plastic, but we thought, let's go for a single-use glass bottle, in this case, one that's used for spirits and alcohol. So how much energy do we think is required to produce a recycled bottle versus just producing another new one? So do you reckon it's 25%, 75%, or 90%? There are no silly answers, so don't be shy. Just have a guess, pop it in the chat. I'll have a quick look. 90%. Got that from Austin. Thank you. Any other opinions or guesses? 75. Couple of 75s. Lots of 75s. Okay, brilliant. Well, to everybody who's been putting that, you are correct. It is 75%. And whilst that's not 90%, it's still really, really high, right? That's a lot of energy to produce a recycled bottle. We actually get through about 70 billion single-use glass, spirits and wine bottles globally. It's a staggering number, isn't it? It's almost impossible to kind of comprehend that scale. And recycling isn't really the best answer because glass requires higher temperatures than plastic or aluminium to melt. One really interesting kind of solution that we've seen that we found quite inspiring is some restaurants, bars and hotels have been working with a company called Eco Spirits. This case study is Hyde & Co Group, that are a group of bars in Bristol. And what Eco Spirits does is essentially they have this bottling facility. So they take spirits and drinks that we know and love, brands that you know, and they fill these really large bulk size containers called Eco Totes that they've spent a lot of time designing. They then deliver those to the bar in this case. And that can be used to refill either a glass bottle again and again, or there can be these pouring devices. The best bit is the 4th step. Once that's empty, the Eco Tote, Eco Spirits will come along, they'll collect it, they'll take it back, wash it, refill it, re-deliver it, and the whole loop starts again. Now, obviously, this isn't for everybody, and a lot of thought and a lot of work and logistics has gone into this solution, but it's absolutely brilliant. And actually, in terms of, for this group of bars in Bristol, they were using about 60 glass bottles per prep session in some venues. In the first 6 months alone, they saved about 3,000 bottles, which is great. Every circular solution like this is going to be impacting your carbon reduction targets as well. And what I personally liked is that rather than hiding these Eco Totes away so that nobody saw them, they really talked about it. You know, they put it on the menus, and actually it encouraged customers to try different spirits from local suppliers and things like that. So it was a real success story. Let's do another one. Disposable cups. We all see a lot of these, right? They're everywhere. Of course, some of them get recycled. What do we reckon? Do we reckon it's 1%, around about 1%, around about 6%, or around about 15% of them get recycled? Answers on a postcard, please, or otherwise known as the chat box. 1%, 6%. I can see Austin saying there that they Googled it the first time, right? No Googling. Okay, so the answer is, in fact, unfortunately, less than 1%. So some research from the University of Kent showed that it's under 1%, which is a huge problem because we discard about 7 million disposable cups every single day. Again, a staggering amount. If you were to line all of those up, you can go around the world, 5.5 times. There are lots of different ways and different solutions for different business types that we can tackle disposable cups. One that we like for a sort of larger type setting that the University of Manchester did with a company called Vital is that they use this sort of tech-enabled returnable cup scheme. So if you can imagine, there were about 20 cafes on campus that were taking part. And the way it works is students or other people on campus, they've got an app. They go along to get their coffee. They use their phone after they've grabbed their coffee to scan their cup and the lid. It shows a confirmation. They don't actually have to pay a deposit. So that transaction sort of happened in the app. They will only pay anything if they don't bring that cup back to one of the designated stations within a certain period of time, like a few weeks. Now, often people are quite skeptical about these solutions, and you do need a certain environment for it to work. But people think that the behavior change just isn't going to be possible. What was really interesting is that it's been a success there. So, you know, they've saved over 60,000 disposable cups since September last year, which is a great start. The return rate has been really high. This is the hardest thing to get right, people bringing them back. And actually, it needs to be well over 90% for this to be a viable sort of economical solution. Again, there's big carbon savings, but the most interesting thing to me was that the average borrow period was actually 4 days. So typically you'd think, unless someone puts that cup back like right away, almost within a few hours, it's just not happening. They're not going to bring it back. But actually, there's been this behavior change where people take them home, and if they're not buying a coffee every day, they'll take it back a few days later. We thought that was really interesting. It's a nice success story. Okay, we'll try and do a couple more of these. We'll just whiz through them. Mattresses. So I didn't used to know that this was a problem. How many mattresses do we think are disposed of in Europe? This is actually specific to the EU. So 3 million, 13 million, or 30 million. All very big numbers. We've got a couple straight in for the 30 million. Lots of those are 13 million. 13, it is indeed 30 million. So again, a staggering number. And actually, mattresses are a huge problem, and hotels get through a lot. The lifespan isn't that long. Recycling them is really tricky. They're made of mixed materials. There's kind of glues in there, as well as different metals and textiles, etc. And normally the only way they can be recycled is if they're then turned into something like a yoga mat or something that sort of forms part of a carpet, but there's not much else you can do. In the EU, about 60% are landfilled, 40% are incinerated. Outside of the EU, a lot more are incinerated. How do you fix this? It's pretty difficult. Well, something we try to do is also get inspiration from overseas. We look at what's happening in other countries and think, what could we bring into the UK? So in Austria and Germany, a really interesting company called Matter has been working with about 10 hotels so far. They've developed this mattress, which incredibly just has 2 materials. It's quite hard to do. So it has steel and polyester, and those can be easily separated at the end of life, even recycled into new mattresses. The bit that we love the most is the business model. So they actually rent these to hotels. It's like mattresses as a service. And what happens, and we'll look at this with the results. So this hotel in Vienna started this journey working with Matter, and beforehand, all of these mattresses, couldn't be recycled. They were landfilled. Not only have they seen kind of fewer emissions from the production of these sort of more eco-friendly mattresses, but because they've had this take-back system, 100% of the mattresses have either been recycled because this company takes care of it and makes sure that it happens, but also a significant proportion of them get donated to shelters or other charities and people that need them. So they're actually hitting social impact as well. And I think when you can do that, it's sort of extra inspiring. So a really interesting solution. We'll do one more of these, bonus round, and then we'll move on. So miniature toiletries, there are still a lot of these around. And in fact, this stat is from a few years ago, but it won't have gone down by much. It may even have still gone up. So about 200 million travel-sized toiletries from UK hotels end up somewhere. And between landfill, recycling, or incineration, which of those do you think is kind of the most likely destination? Let's see what's coming in here. Got incineration, landfill. No one's going for recycling. And it's not recycling. It is, in fact, landfill. So but again, that's a really poor outcome for these. And I think there's a perception that these have been banned everywhere. They haven't. They have in a few places like California, I think New York, but even EU legislation, which is ahead of most, will only kick in really from about 2030. Again, a nice, inspiring story that we've seen. There's a group of hotels, countryside hotels in the UK called the Pig. They're sort of across England mainly. And they've done two things. So in guest bedrooms, instead of using thousands of these individual minis, which they used to do, they've moved to actually filling these really nice ceramic containers with shampoos and shower gels. Personally, I think this enhances the guest experience. That to me feels more premium than a plastic miniature. The other thing they've done is they've moved to a lot of solid soap bars for things like hand washing. Soap bars, though, you'll have seen this quite often. You use them once or twice and they end up getting binned before another guest comes in. That's not ideal. They've teamed up with a company called Clean the World, who basically collect all of the soap bars that are kind of still intact and they've only been used a few times. They are refined down into something called noodles, which is brilliant, which removes all of the impurities. Clean the World creates new and sanitized soap bars, which then go off for testing to make sure that they are properly sort of re-sanitized. And then they're distributed to NGOs and to people around the world that can't afford soap, essentially, and increasingly to local communities that need that as well. So the Pig have donated lots of the Clean the World soap to local communities that could really do with that help. They've only really just got started with this, but in the past kind of year or so, but they've, it's a couple of years. But they very quickly gathered about 700 kilos of soap. That's a lot of bars that can then be redistributed. Actually, there was a big water saving because the Clean the World process uses far less water than is needed for creating new soap. And again, it's hitting sort of carbon reduction as well. So look, those might not have been sort of relevant to your business, but hopefully it just kind of gets you thinking about what some of the possibilities are out there. Before we go on, I'm just going to have a quick peek in the chat to see if there is kind of anything. Ashil, I can see you've maybe responded to a few questions. Has anything else come up so far?
No, all good. There was a question about whether the Matter service was available in the UK.
I don't believe it is yet, but we really want to see it available in the UK, and that's something that we're going to be working on. Good question. Super. Okay, we'll just go in a different direction for a few minutes. So we're working with lots of hotels and other kind of businesses to help them take ideas around sort of circular economy actions and translate them into business plans so that they actually happen and they don't just sort of end up being an idea that never goes through. We haven't figured everything out and we're really keen to hear your ideas on this, but here's sort of 4 main learnings that we've had so far. The first one is, if you are able to, if you have the data to understand the quantities of things that you're buying in, you can map kind of how and where they're used. And even if you can understand the associated processes, labor costs, etc., that is brilliant. So if you can do that easily, do it, and you can really make, it will help you find the right solutions. But do not get stuck in what we call analysis paralysis before you've even started. The chances are, for most businesses, you probably know what you're using hundreds or thousands of, and whether it's ending up, in the bin or somewhere else not very good. So we would encourage you to go straight to point number 2, which is finding solutions that are out there. And I think the key points here are that you're not alone. The chances are that other businesses in your sector are tackling the same thing, or sometimes even in slightly tangential industries as well. And what we would really encourage people to do is think beyond substitute materials. So quite often people are dealing with problematic plastics, and it's natural to think, what's a better material, right? Can I switch to something compostable, for example? We would really, really encourage people to think, how can I redesign the whole process, or switch to reuse, or perhaps just phase out this thing that we're doing so that that material and that waste isn't being used. So that's really important. That normally leads to the highest impact and quite often the highest cost savings as well. Do crunch the numbers. Of course, it's really important in a business plan to project what the environmental impact might be. Our tool can help with that, and we'll come on to that later. And of course, in this current economy, understanding the financial case, whether there are cost savings or whether it's more of an investment with long-term savings potentially, that's got to be really clear for it to get through. Finally, I think the most important one, where things often fall down, is sort of bringing people along, getting buy-in across the organization. For us, when we've seen people engage frontline staff really early, that always helps, rather than it being sort of coming top down. No surprises there. Show people it's been done before, otherwise there's always going to be doubts, and build a holistic case. So not just the numbers, but what could this mean actually for customer satisfaction? As we saw, quite a lot of these solutions lead to a kind of better experience for guests or customers than the single-use stuff. What could it mean for your brand, for staff satisfaction? So build a holistic case. The final point I would say on this from us is that there are no perfect solutions. If you're using thousands of something that might be single-use plastic and you're looking to switch to something else, there is nothing that doesn't have a trade-off. It might mean more cardboard, it might mean more water because you're washing something, and people will always say, well, you're creating a different problem. That's always going to be the case, but if you're really moving the needle quite far in the right direction, and yes, there's a small trade-off, that's okay. So I think recognizing that and just being transparent about it really, really helps. Okay, into the sort of, I guess, the final section of our kind of content, a little bit about our journey. So we've been designing our platform for about the past year, and actually we launched the first version in March. And to do that, we really wanted to collaborate with industry, and we were working with about 10 or 15, mainly hotels. The most important of those has been our full design partner, which is Wales's very own Bluestone National Park Resort. We've collaborated really closely. We speak weekly, and the deal is essentially that we give them as much of our time as possible, and we help to shape the platform around their needs. And Bluestone give us lots of their data, lots of their time. We've been down there to understand their own journey. So it's a real design partnership. What we love about Bluestone is that they're very far along on their sustainability journey. They've won a King's Award for sustainability. They've done a lot. But their whole attitude is the work is never done. There's always more to tackle. You can see Martin here, their director of sustainability, quite literally when we were down there, digging around in the bins, making sure that we understand what is still going into waste. They're at a point now where I think less than 1% of the total waste goes to landfill, but there's still lots of work to do. So they've been really helpful. A couple of things. This is kind of the end of the case studies, but we'll whiz through these that they've done that we like. Milk purgles. I mean, they've moved from these 2-litre milk bottles you can see here on the left, so they're plastic containers, to these large 14-litre boxes that go in dispensers. Quite soon, that will be saving them 20,000 plastic bottles a year, which is hundreds of kilos of plastic, and it saves them money. This is a really interesting one. I didn't even know chopping boards could be a problem. So obviously this is in the kitchens. These often end up in the bin really quickly because of sort of bacteria and other contaminants. Actually, they've been working with a company. So every certain number of weeks or months, those chopping boards, the top layer is essentially sort of skimmed off or resurfaced. And that does two things. One, it means that chopping board goes back into circulation for reuse. And then the material that's taken off is used to create new chopping boards. It's just kind of, for us, it's a brilliant bit of innovation. And again, it's less emissions, less waste, and saved cost. Glassware. This almost feels old-fashioned, right? Going back to glasses, but there were so many plastic cups being used in certain areas of Bluestone. It's understandable for anyone who's been there. There are a lot of children around. But what they realized was that in a couple of these outlets, they could actually go back to glass, which is then reused and washed. The main challenge was training and things like signage, so that glass didn't end up in the wrong sort of dangerous areas. So that was the big effort. It's been a huge success. They're saving 150,000 plastic cups a year, which is over a ton of plastic. So these solutions don't always have to be massively high tech. Sometimes it's about being bold enough to take on behavior change, do the right training, get the communication right with staff and guests, and you can have that impact. And the last one, water fountains. Again, it's we see these around. This is hardly a new innovation, but there are still far too many single-use water bottles. So Bluestone used to sell water bottles. They've now moved to these fountains, and staff are given reusable water bottles. Guests are asked to bring them. That saves a lot of plastic. But what's really interesting is that they told their prospective guests and their current sort of members about this initiative via email, and actually it created quite a buzz, and that campaign generated a significant number of new bookings around the sort of sustainability messaging that offset the sort of lost profits from selling water bottles. So again, it wasn't that they were sort of suddenly losing money. Right, before I go just into like a really quick 1-minute whiz round of our platform, I'm just going to come back in and see if there are any questions. Ashil, you've been keeping more of an eye on this than me.
I think it's all good. You can move on to the video.
Brilliant, super. Okay, excellent. So I'm just going to share a different tab, and hopefully everybody can see that okay. Just let me know if not. So what are we trying to do at Replacer? So we are helping these hospitality businesses. So lots of our users so far, again, are hotels, event venues. We've got some sports clubs, stadiums. Increasingly, we'll have restaurants, cafes, etc. And we're helping them to discover viable alternatives to problematic single-use and other disposable items. And there's sort of 4 main things it does. The first thing is that we want to inspire, very much on the theme of today. So you can browse solutions that other people are working on, other businesses. We're always going to be producing articles about new innovations, incoming regulations. So there's an education piece. We'll encourage people to tackle certain high impact items first. We are always vetting suppliers of sustainable alternatives, and so people can browse those. The other 3 main things that you can do are that you can browse this growing list, and we're working with the whole sector to really build this list out of problematic items that you want to reduce or hopefully even eliminate completely. And they can be separated into these different sort of functional areas. If we stick with our sort of water bottle examples, you click on any item, and what we will present you with is a range of different solutions that other businesses have tried. They're not all going to be relevant to you. That's why there's a really broad range of them. And we really stick as high up the waste hierarchy as possible, which means that most solutions are around reuse. And only where we think it's really necessary do we have sort of substitute material. So we're really trying to kind of design waste out of the process. So you can browse those by cost saving, by waste reduction, by how easy they are to implement, for example, and quite soon by carbon reduction. And then you can go into these different solutions. You can read about why you might want to implement it, what other businesses have learned, etc. And then there's kind of 2 things that you can do beyond that. And I'll go to the first one here. So it might be that you think, right, I want to provide a free reusable bottle to my staff. This sounds like a bit of a no-brainer. So to find the suppliers of those, you can actually go in and you can see the suppliers that we've actually vetted. That means we've interrogated their sustainability credentials to make sure they're not kind of greenwashing. You can find then sort of more information about them. You can look at their different credentials. You could request samples. You can contact them to make sure they satisfy your own requirements. You get the idea. So we're adding those circular economy innovators all the time so that we can really champion their products and services. The last thing, and then I'm going to bring it back for discussion, is that, and I'll take a different example here. So say we're looking at installing smart water dispensers. Back to what we were talking about, the business cases, we want to make it easier for people to do the numbers. Even though, some of us all love a spreadsheet, we thought there's got to be a better way. So we built this sort of ROI calculator, that initially gives people some example data from, let's say, a typical business. But the idea here is you can put in your own data of, in this case, how many plastic bottles you get through a year, perhaps how much you buy them in for. And then you can start to work through the replacement item. So for example, if you're getting these dispensers, you can put in the quotes in terms of the costs, how many you might need. You can start to factor in electricity usage, water. You can add in things like marketing, training. We're trying to leave sort of no stone unturned here, so that eventually you can have not only an understanding of how much plastic you could save, or how much, quite soon this will be the sort of carbon reduction as well, or at least an indicator of that, but also what is the break-even point, what are the long-term cost savings, etc. And then you can kind of save those and share them with colleagues. This is the first version of our platform. We have got lots of improvements in planning. If you want to go and try it, it's free. And actually, forever, we want to keep the solutions free and expand access to that knowledge. There might be a part at some point that we charge for, but in terms of the library of solutions, we're going to keep that free. You can go to app.replacer.com. We'll put it in the chat. It takes about a minute to sign up. We are completely kind of reliant on feedback at this early stage, so we'd love to know your thoughts, or if there are items you can't see on there that you're tackling that you'd like us to incorporate. Right, that has been a lot from me, so I'm going to stop sharing and thank everybody for bearing with me. I hope that everyone's kind of learned something from that, or it's inspired some thinking, and we can bring it back and either dive back in or have some questions.
Thank you very much, Ed. It's really, really fascinating and interesting talk there, and it's wonderful. Some of those examples are actually some of the really simple things that people can actually do as well, which is great. If everybody's happy to put their camera on, we can have a general discussion if there are any questions. Have we got any questions?
While we're waiting for questions, just acknowledging, I think Austin's comment there around the unused, unopened face masks. Yeah, and just thank you for raising that. I mean, Ashil, I think that's not one we've looked at so far, is it? But I think it's something that we're aware of, and we've heard a few people raise, and there must be some solutions out there, and perhaps that's one that we can take away.
Thank you.
Elena, you've got a question?
Yes. It's brilliant presentation. Thank you so much. And my question is, such a great platform. What is the way? Is it company needs to subscribe, or it's annual payment? What's the cost? Or it's free of charge, or some part of the platform is free, another part is you need to pay some fees.
Yeah, absolutely, and we're really transparent about that. So our sort of primary revenue stream will be from the suppliers of these circular alternatives. So we are going to do absolutely everything in our power to promote them, not just via the platform, but via our sort of our various kind of marketing channels that we have. So they go through our process, which Ashil leads on, where we have a really kind of sort of in-depth interrogation of their credentials. And of course, no one's perfect, but we want to see that they're really far along in their journey and that they align with our sort of our values and our outlook. But once they are approved, it's those suppliers that pay us to be on the platform. So we end up being a kind of marketing channel for them. That being said, in terms of the users, so for businesses, we want to keep that part, as I said, of looking at different solutions and actions free forever. That's our plan, and I've said it there, so I've got to stick to it, and we've got to stick to it. But and this is important, we need to be a kind of viable business, a sort of profit for purpose business as well. So what we are doing at the moment is building our kind of premium functionality. So we're working with organizations like Bluestone and others to understand what else do businesses need. Do they need something around impact reporting, or how they're putting together these business plans that we can charge them for? So at some point we'll charge businesses, but we'll keep the library part free.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Anybody else?
Just a quick question. Yeah, a great presentation, Ed, by the way.
Thank you.
My business involvement is very much around HR, staff engagement. And the question I had for you, which is really following on from what Elena said, in terms of providing that consultancy element to specific clients, is that something you would take on board? And the stuff that we look at is very much around staff engagement and leadership engagement programs. And then introducing circular economy initiative as part of that training module, if you like, and onboarding practices. But in terms of then having that level of expertise to advise the client to the next stage, and in terms of sustainability, recyclability, is that something that you would provide?
It's a really good question. I'll kind of start us off, and then Ashil, if there's anything you want to add afterwards, please do so. So we do some of that at the moment, Hugh. So for example, with Bluestone, we sort of team up with them to deliver kind of onboarding sessions, not just around kind of the platform, but more as to like the why, you know, why should you even be looking at doing this? So really that kind of engagement piece. At the same time, we are trying to build a platform that's really scalable rather than a consulting model. So I think we will do that for a limited number of like design partners, but we're definitely not looking to scale a consulting model. Ashil, I was just thinking in terms of best practices that you've seen for that staff engagement piece, anything that you want to add, because we see a lot of businesses that take on that challenge.
And I mean, we know that this is a key bit that we need to continue improving into the platform. It's all about process change at the end of the day. So we are trying to inspire this through our content, but also from building more case studies, more examples of what others have done, so that it can really say, okay, that's actually something that we could be doing. But also this whole part that we've actually done quite good with Bluestone is about now, like every time someone see something that is single use in their business, it's just like, okay, what can I be doing about it? So yeah, I mean, it could be obviously interesting to keep the conversation going, because I think we still have some interest from a few companies now about this sort of activities. So definitely interesting to know more.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. It's great. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, we'd love to follow up on that one.
Laura,
Okay.
you've got a question?
Yeah, if nobody else has one for the moment, then I was wondering what criteria do you use to assess the suppliers that are on your website in terms of what definition of circular economy or sustainability, because there's loads out there and people argue about this all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something that we spend a lot of time thinking about, because it's a really tricky one to get right. Ashil, as you lead on this, I'm gonna come back to you again just to outline some of the key criteria.
Yeah, so we have different types of suppliers on the platform. So some that either provide alternatives, so like substitutes, better materials, or some that actually provide a whole reusable model, solution, or item. So therefore, the question are different for each. But basically, if we look at one that is providing like a product specifically, we are looking at questioning their supply chains, whether they can provide transparency, also like where it's being made, but how it is packaged, and so on and so forth. And for reusable models, we are really trying to understand all of the different aspects of how a solution is being implemented, whether it's feasible, but also what are the hidden impact about this, and trying to put the pros and cons of this. And then at the end, it's really about showing transparently the result of this discussion.
Yeah, and just if I can add one thing to that as well, of course, it helps when people have accreditations, or perhaps they're members of certain associations, or they're B Corp or whatever, but it's not that straightforward, right? I think in certain areas you have to have, if you're involved in water or safety, you have to have certain accreditations. But there are also a lot of startups coming up with some amazing solutions that are still on that sort of certification journey. But we meet them, we meet everybody several times, we get to know them, and actually, if they hit our bar in terms of what they're doing and they can provide enough evidence, even if they don't have lots and lots of stamps, we still want to champion them. So if that makes sense, that's the balance that we're always gonna, and it will be challenging over the years ahead to always strike that.
Stephen, do you want to pick up on anything there?
Yeah, sorry.
I can see your face, Stephen.
You know me too well, Jill. I'm Stephen from Star Linen. So
hi, Stephen.
Really great presentation. So thank you for that. We've been sort of, we work with Bluestone as well, actually. And we're members of various associations, including the sort of UK Housekeeper Association. We're dealing with various sort of decision makers in the process of what to do with old pillows and what to do, to avoid. Basically, the goal is 100% avoidance of landfill. And we've partnered with a number of businesses, including TFR, where they will take and recycle the mattress. It is all manual. There's a little bit of automation in their process, but most of it is manual. They cross-deck it. It's in and out. Whole containers gone in a matter of, well, half an hour. They cleared one out the other day. It's just ridiculous. But we've now got to a point where working with some hospitality groups on the circular economy of a pillow. So we're taking the filling, we're sterilising it to an NHS level grade. It's going back in and it's going back out. And 60% now of our sort of acquired product is now in the UK. It's being done here in the UK. You can't do it for the mattress toppers, but you can do it. They just haven't got the machinery level that they need for the UK at the moment. But in terms of pillows and duvets, we've got some great programs in place. But the issue has always been the volume. So I think it was probably worth having a side conversation, because a lot of the things you offer, I'd love to actually promote those so that people are more aware of them, and even maybe include that on our site or talk to our sales team about those additional availability of services, because they may have not heard of them. But with Bluestone, we're actually looking at them for the first rental model. So the idea being that we guarantee everything's going to get recycled, because as you know, Bluestone's mattresses are currently taken away and they are incinerated. So for £7 we can take a mattress away and get it and make sure it avoids landfill, or avoids incineration. So I think it's probably worth having a side chat to just see how maybe a collaboration, or we're not looking for anything for it, we just want to put those services out as part of our, we're a B Corp business. I think there's something new every week in our business that we're setting challenges for. And packaging is a huge one, and we've adapted and moved a lot of plastic out and a lot more cardboard based now, and helping them with the disposal of it. So as I say, I think there's so much in this, as Jill spotted, that I think it's probably worth a side chat at some point.
Absolutely. Thank you, Stephen, and really good to meet you. Ashil and I are aware of Star Linen and absolutely kind of love the work that you're doing. So we should definitely pick that up separately. And it's inspiring to hear about the types of solutions that you're working on. And I think, as we said at some point in the presentation, we just I think there is growing awareness of what's out there. But there's still a lot more to do. There's people still often struggle to find suppliers of kind of innovative solutions. So if we can help as well, we'd absolutely love to.
Brilliant. Okay, well, thank you very much.
Super.
Great presentation.
I'll put you in touch afterwards.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions? We've sort of got 2 minutes left on our time, but is there any other questions anybody would like to ask? If not, I'll just thank Ed and Ashil again, just for a really inspiring webinar. If you do think of any queries or questions that you think about afterwards, please just either email us at cake@cardiffmet, and we'll forward them on to Ed or Ashil. I'm sure you can give them something challenging.
Thank you very much from us as well for having us on, and really open to connecting with anybody afterwards. It's been great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, everyone.